Poor little girl builds custom legs for a disabled millionaire disguised as a homeless man. 3 days later, a Mustang parks in front of her door. Before we get started, leave a comment and tell us where in the world you're watching from. Let's begin. The soft glow of a desk lamp illuminated Lucy Thompson's face as her small fingers worked meticulously with the circuit board. At just 12 years old, her bedroom resembled more of a workshop than a child sanctuary. Discarded electronic parts, salvaged from dumpsters behind repair shops, were organized in plastic containers labeled in her neat handwriting. Motors, circuits, batteries, and mysteries. "Lucy, dinner's ready," called her mother's tired voice from their tiny kitchen. Lucy reluctantly set down her soldering iron, her latest creation, a small robot assembled from an old remote control car and parts of a broken DVD player, standing proudly beside her homework. "Coming, Mom," she replied, glancing at the robot with a satisfied smile. Their Detroit apartment was small but clean, filled with second-hand furniture and the lingering scent of the discount fabric softener her mother used. Olivia Thompson stood at the stove, still wearing her cashier uniform from her day job. In 2 hours, she would change into her waitress outfit for the night shift. "How was school today?" Olivia asked, placing a modest bowl of pasta in front of her daughter. Lucy shrugged, twirling spaghetti around her fork. "Mr. Parker liked my science project. He said I should consider entering the state competition." What Lucy didn't mention was how Amber Jenkins had laughed when she'd presented her solar-powered pencil sharpener to the class, or how she'd eaten lunch alone again in the corner of the cafeteria, sketching designs for a robotic arm while other kids traded snacks and secrets. Olivia's face brightened. "That's wonderful, honey. Your father would be so proud." The mention of her father made Lucy's chest tighten. Though he had passed away 4 years ago, his presence still lingered in the tools he'd left behind and the words that echoed in her mind whenever she faced a challenging project. "If you can't buy it, build it yourself." After dinner, Lucy helped wash the dishes before her mother rushed off to her second job, leaving Lucy with the familiar instruction to lock the door and finish her homework. Instead, she returned to her room and her half-finished robot. This was her world, where broken things could be fixed, where problems had solutions, and where Lucy didn't feel quite so alone. The next afternoon, as the final school bell rang, Lucy walked slowly toward home. Her backpack was heavy with textbooks, but her mind was heavier with the day's events. Kevin Miller had accidentally knocked her robotics project off her desk during class, causing one of the motors to break. Mr. Parker had given her a replacement from the science supply closet, but the embarrassment still stung. As she passed by Wilson Park, she paused to watch children playing. Their laughter carried across the rusty swings and cracked slides. A group of girls Lucy's age huddled together, sharing secrets and giggling. Lucy gripped her backpack straps tighter and continued walking. "They're not so special," she whispered to herself, though the familiar ache of not belonging settled in her chest. At the street corner, waiting for the light to change, Lucy's gaze drifted to the gray clouds gathering overhead. Detroit's autumn, skies always seemed to match her mood. Neither completely dark nor fully bright, just somewhere in between. One day, she promised herself as the light turned green, one day I'll build something so amazing that everyone will see I'm not just the weird girl who likes robots. What Lucy couldn't possibly know, as she made her way home through the familiar streets of her neighborhood, was that her chance to create something truly extraordinary was about to present itself in the most unexpected way, through a chance encounter with a mysterious man without legs who would change her life forever. Lucy's path home from the robotics club took her past the same street corner every Tuesday. Usually she was lost in thought, mentally redesigning the day's project or imagining improvements for her bedroom inventions. But today, something, or rather someone, caught her attention. A man in a weathered wheelchair sat at the corner, a small cardboard sign propped against one wheel. "Veteran. Lost legs, any help appreciated." His beard was unkempt, his clothes worn, but it was his eyes that made Lucy slow her steps. Clear blue eyes that seemed sharper, more aware than his disheveled appearance suggested. Other students hurried past, some averting their gaze, others dropping coins without stopping. Lucy, however, paused. "What's that you're carrying?" the man asked, his voice surprisingly articulate as he nodded toward the partially disassembled circuit board peeking from her backpack. Startled by his interest, Lucy hesitated before answering. "It's part of a motion sensor. I'm trying to make it more sensitive to smaller movements." "Interesting approach," he replied, leaning forward slightly. "Have you considered adjusting the capacitor threshold instead of modifying the sensor array?" Lucy's eyes widened. Few adults, let alone strangers on street corners, could offer such specific technical advice. "I'm Jack," he said, extending a calloused hand. "Lucy," she replied, cautiously shaking it. "How do you know about motion sensors?" A hint of a smile crossed Jack's weathered face. "You pick up things here and there. Used to work with electronics, before." He gestured vaguely toward his missing legs. For 20 minutes, Lucy forgot she was talking to a homeless man. They discussed circuitry, power efficiency, and practical applications. Jack asked thoughtful questions about her robotics projects, showing genuine interest rather than the polite confusion her mother usually expressed. "You should get home," Jack finally said, noticing the darkening sky. "Don't want your parents worrying." "Just my mom," Lucy corrected automatically. "My dad died 4 years ago. He was an engineer." Jack's expression softened. "He'd be proud of you. Not many kids your age could reconfigure a circuit board like you described." Lucy felt an unexpected lump in her throat. "Thanks. I'll see you around maybe." Walking home, Lucy couldn't stop thinking about Jack. His technical knowledge contradicted his circumstances, and his missing legs reminded her of a documentary she'd watched about advanced prosthetics. Sleek, responsive limbs that returned. Mobility to amputees. The price tag had been staggering. $50,000 to $100,000 per leg. As she entered their apartment, her mother called from the kitchen, "Lucy, how is robotics club?" But Lucy's mind was already racing with possibilities, sketching, mental diagrams, and calculating material requirements. She remembered her father's workshop mantra. "Every problem has a solution, you just haven't found it yet." "Fine," she answered distractedly. "Mom, do we have any spare motors from Dad's old projects?" That night, as rain pattered against her window, Lucy pulled out her notebook and began to draw. At the top of the page, she wrote a simple title: Project, New Legs for Jack. She had no idea that this small act of compassion would soon change not only Jack's life but her own, in ways she could never imagine. Lucy's desk lamp cast long shadows across her bedroom walls as she hunched over her laptop, scrolling through pages of technical specifications for prosthetic limbs. The prices made her stomach sink. Even the most basic models cost thousands of dollars, with advanced ones reaching 6 figures. "This is impossible," she muttered, pushing back from her desk. Her eyes drifted to the framed photo of her father. He stood proudly next to a homemade wind turbine he'd built for their previous home, his smile wide beneath his safety goggles. The memory of his voice filtered through her mind. "If you can't afford to buy it, build it yourself." That's the Thompson way. Lucy straightened her shoulders. "The Thompson way," she whispered to herself. She pulled out her sketchbook and began to draw. Her initial designs were rough. Mechanical legs powered by recycled servo motors, with joints made from reinforced plastic. She considered materials she could salvage: old computer parts for the control systems, discarded appliances for motors, maybe even suspension components from junked bicycles. 3 hours and 12 pages of sketches later, Lucy finally fell asleep, at her desk, pencil still in hand. The next morning, Olivia found the drawings while gathering laundry. Concern creased her forehead as she examined the intricate diagrams labeled Prosthetic Prototype V1 and Jack's legs. When Lucy returned from school, her mother was waiting, sketches spread across the kitchen table. "Who's Jack?" Olivia asked, voice tight with worry. Lucy shifted uncomfortably. "He's a veteran. He lost his legs. He sits on the corner of Maple and 4th. "You're designing prosthetic legs for a homeless stranger?" Olivia's voice rose slightly. Lucy, honey, I know you want to help people, but He's really smart, Mom, Lucy interrupted. He knows about electronics and engineering. He helped me with my motion sensor project. And he doesn't have legs. Sweetheart, I understand you feel sorry for him, but professional engineers with millions in funding build prosthetics. You're 12. Lucy's chin lifted, a gesture so reminiscent of her father that Olivia's arguments faltered. Dad always said age doesn't determine ability. He said what matters is seeing problems clearly and having the courage to solve them. Lucy's voice grew passionate. I can do this, Mom. I know I can. Olivia sank into a chair. Even if you could, and I'm not saying you can, we can barely afford your school supplies. Where would you get the materials, the tools? I've been thinking about that, Lucy replied, pulling out another sheet covered with lists. I can use parts from the electronics recycling center. Mr. Parker might let me use the school workshop. And maybe, Lucy, her mother interrupted gently. Sometimes compassion means knowing our limitations. But what if I don't have those limitations? What if I can actually help him? Lucy's eyes glistened. I need to try, Mom. It feels important, like something I'm supposed to do. Olivia studied her daughter's determined face and recognized an expression she'd seen countless times on her late husband's features, that unmistakable look when a problem had captured his imagination completely. We'll talk about it more, she finally conceded. That night, Lucy dreamed of her father. They stood in his workshop examining blueprints together. It won't be easy, Dream Dad said, pointing to her prosthetic designs. I know, Lucy replied. He smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. But the things most worth doing rarely are. Lucy woke with tears on her cheeks and absolute clarity in her heart. No matter the obstacles, she would build those legs for Jack. It wasn't just about helping a stranger anymore. It was about honoring her father's legacy by using the gifts he'd passed down to her. The Thompson way. Lucy's bedroom had transformed into a makeshift workshop. Parts salvaged from discarded electronics crowded every surface, motherboards from obsolete computers, motors from broken toys, springs from abandoned office chairs. A hand-drawn poster titled Operation Walk Again hung above her desk, featuring her increasingly complex designs. Her first prototype was embarrassingly simple, essentially wooden stilts with crude hinges and foam padding. It collapsed under its own weight before Jack could even test it. That's all right, she told herself, sweeping the broken pieces into a box labeled Lessons Learned. Edison failed thousands of times before the light bulb. The second attempt incorporated shock absorbers from an old mountain bike and motors from discarded remote-controlled cars. This version actually stood upright when propped against her bed, but the battery drained within minutes and the knee joints locked unexpectedly. By the third prototype, Lucy had convinced Mr. Parker to let her use the school workshop during lunch breaks. She improved the power system using components from laptop batteries and redesigned the joints with inspiration from a mechanical pencil's internal mechanism. Fascinating approach, Mr. Parker commented, watching her work. Is this for the science fair? Sort of, Lucy answered vaguely, not ready to explain her real purpose. This version lasted nearly an hour before overheating and melting part of the plastic framework. The smell of burnt circuitry filled her bedroom, setting off the smoke detector and bringing her mother running. Lucy Thompson, Olivia cried, throwing open windows. You could have burned down the building, but I figured out the power regulation problem, Lucy insisted, pointing to her notes even as her mother confiscated her soldering iron. The fourth prototype was more promising. Aluminum supports from dismantled shelving units, better motors, and a cooling system adapted from an old computer. Lucy spent a week fine-tuning it, skipping lunch and staying late after robotics club. On a rainy Thursday, she carefully packed the prototype in her backpack, certain this would be the breakthrough. But when she assembled it in her room and tested the weight capacity by stacking textbooks, the ankle joint buckled catastrophically, sending books tumbling and breaking a key support rod. Lucy sat amid the wreckage, tears of frustration welling in her eyes. 4 failures. 4 weeks of work with nothing to show but a collection of broken parts and depleted confidence. Maybe Mom's right, she whispered, picking up a snapped metal rod. Maybe this is beyond me. The next day, Lucy took a different route home, avoiding Jack's corner. But as fate would have it, she spotted him outside the public library, maneuvering, his wheelchair up the accessibility ramp. "Lucy," he called, his weathered face brightening. "Haven't seen you in a while." She approached reluctantly, embarrassed by her failures. "Been busy with school stuff?" Jack studied her downcast expression. "Something's bothering you." Before she could stop herself, Lucy blurted, "How do you not give up? When things keep failing, I mean." Jack wheeled himself to a nearby bench and gestured for her to sit. Interesting question from someone so young. "I'm working on this project," she explained carefully. "I've tried 4 different approaches and they all failed." "Only 4?" Jack chuckled. "You're just getting started." He rolled up his sleeve, revealing a scarred forearm. "See this? 3rd-degree burns trying to disarm an IED. Spent 8 months learning to use my hands again, then lost my legs to another one 6 months later." Lucy stared, speechless. "After my legs, I tried to give up completely," Jack continued. "Wouldn't eat, wouldn't speak to doctors. Then a nurse told me something I'll never forget. Failure isn't falling down. It's refusing to get back up." His clear blue eyes held hers. "Each failure teaches you something the success never could. The question is, what did yours teach you?" Lucy's mind raced through her prototypes, suddenly seeing each not as a failure but as a step forward. The power regulation issue solved in the 3rd version, the joint flexibility improved in the 4th. That I need better materials, she realized aloud. And a completely different approach to the weight distribution. Jack smiled. "Sounds like you're on prototype 5 then." As they parted ways, Lucy felt renewed determination coursing through her. Jack had no idea he'd just reignited the project designed specifically for him. "Failure isn't falling down," she repeated to herself, already sketching new ideas in her notebook. "It's refusing to get back up." Lucy's new approach required knowledge she didn't have. Anatomy, pressure points, weight distribution across prosthetic contact surfaces. Her internet research only confused her further with medical terminology beyond her comprehension. "Need something specific?" Mr. Parker asked one afternoon, finding her poring over a human anatomy book in the science lab. Lucy hesitated. "I'm trying to understand how weight transfers through leg joints during walking." His eyebrows rose with interest. "Biomechanics, eh? That's quite advanced. Your project is evolving." "It has to," she murmured, thinking of Jack. Mr. Parker studied her determined expression. "You know, the lab has some equipment that might help. You could use it after school if you'd like. Under supervision, of course." Lucy's face brightened. "Really? That would be amazing." Meanwhile, Lucy continued her visits to Jack, bringing sandwiches and asking carefully crafted questions. "Does your wheelchair ever feel uncomfortable at certain points?" she asked one day, unwrapping a peanut butter sandwich for him. "The pressure on my lower back after a few hours is the worst," Jack replied, accepting half the sandwich. "And where?" "My legs end, the residual limbs. They get tender if I sit too long." Lucy nodded, mentally noting these details for her design. She never mentioned her project, wanting it to be a surprise if, when, she succeeded. One evening, as Lucy struggled with a sketch of ankle flexibility mechanisms in the building's laundry room, an elderly woman peered over her shoulder. "That looks like a prosthetic joint," the woman observed. Lucy quickly covered her drawings. "It's just a school project." "I was a surgical nurse for 40 years, dear," the woman said with a gentle smile. "I recognize medical designs when I see them." Lucy remembered seeing her around the building but had never spoken to her. "You're in 3B, right?" "Mrs. Wilson," she confirmed. "And you're Olivia's daughter, the little inventor. Your mother talks about you at the tenant meetings." Lucy relaxed slightly. "I'm trying to design affordable prosthetic legs, but I don't understand enough about how weight transfers through the ankle and knee during walking." Mrs. Wilson's eyes sparkled. "Well now, that happens to be something I know quite a bit about. Assisted in hundreds of orthopedic surgeries. Within days, a remarkable support network began forming around Lucy's project. Mr. Parker provided after-hours access to the school's materials testing equipment. Mrs. Wilson supplied anatomical knowledge, sketching pressure points and explaining weight distribution principles. Even the owner of the local hardware store, intrigued by Lucy's specific questions about lightweight structural materials, began setting aside aluminum scraps and promising to call if anything useful came in. Lucy's bedroom wall now featured an improved design schematic incorporating everyone's input. The project was evolving from a child's well-intentioned effort into something with genuine potential. One evening, Olivia discovered Lucy and Mrs. Wilson at their kitchen table, surrounded by diagrams. "Mrs. Wilson is helping me understand tibial weight distribution," Lucy explained quickly. Olivia's expression softened as she recognized her daughter's project was attracting substantive support from knowledgeable adults. "Would you like some tea, Mrs. Wilson?" she offered, her initial reservations about the project beginning to fade. None of them, not Lucy, not Mr. Parker, not Mrs. Wilson, knew the full purpose of the various components they were helping design. Like assembling puzzle pieces without seeing the full picture, they were collectively creating something extraordinary. And none of them could possibly suspect the true identity of the man for whom all this effort was intended. For Lucy, each small breakthrough felt like a step toward fulfilling her promise to herself. But she would soon discover that the universe had placed her on this path for reasons far beyond what she could imagine. Reasons that would expand her world in ways both wonderful and challenging. Sometimes, Mrs. Wilson told her one afternoon as they tested joint flexibility, the most important connections in life aren't the mechanical ones. Lucy nodded politely, focused on her measurements, not yet understanding the profound truth in those words. The field trip to Detroit Electronic Salvage wasn't Lucy's idea of excitement for most of her classmates, but for her, it was like Christmas morning. While other students complained about the smell of old circuit boards and discarded appliances, Lucy methodically explored every aisle, her eyes scanning for usable components. "Remember, you're looking for examples of sustainable recycling for your reports," Mr. Parker reminded the class, "not collecting items." Lucy nodded absently, already distracted by a pile of discarded office equipment. That's when she spotted it, partially hidden beneath broken monitors and tangled cables, the distinctive control unit of a high-end motorized wheelchair. Her heart raced as she carefully pulled it from the heap, revealing not just the control module but an intact motor system and pressure-sensitive padding. According to the manufacturer's label, this was a Maxwell X300, a $30,000 assistive device that had somehow ended up discarded. "Mr. Parker," she called, trying to keep the excitement from her voice, "I found something perfect for my recycling report." He examined her find. "Interesting choice, Lucy. These advanced wheelchairs have remarkable engineering. The battery system alone is worth studying." "Could I possibly take this particular piece for my project?" Lucy asked, holding her breath. After securing permission from both Mr. Parker and the facility manager, who seemed glad someone wanted the junk, Lucy could barely contain herself on the bus ride back. The Maxwell's components were far superior to anything she'd salvaged before. Precision motors designed specifically for smooth biomechanical movement, pressure sensors that could provide feedback to the user, and a control system that could handle complex commands. That evening, carefully disassembling the unit on newspaper spread across her bedroom floor, Lucy discovered something even more valuable. The wheelchair's manual contained detailed specifications about weight distribution, motor torque requirements, and human interface design principles. "This changes everything," she whispered, reverently turning pages filled with exactly the information she needed. For the next week, Lucy practically lived in the school workshop. Mr. Parker, impressed by her dedication to what he still believed was an ambitious science fair project, gave her unprecedented access. "Your hydraulic pressure system is ingenious," he commented one afternoon, watching her adapt the wheelchair's motor to her prosthetic design. "Using the printer's ink pump mechanism for fine control, that's thinking outside the box." Lucy beamed at the praise. I needed something with precision control that could handle variable pressure. You know, Mr. Parker said thoughtfully. The state engineering competition is accepting entries next month. With some refinement, this could be a serious contender. Lucy froze momentarily. She hadn't considered sharing her project publicly. It was for Jack, not for recognition. But the competition could provide resources she desperately needed. I'll think about it, she said carefully. That night, studying her latest prototype, now featuring the wheelchair's responsive knee joint mechanism and a custom-built ankle assembly using parts from an industrial printer, Lucy realized she was no longer working on a child's project. The legs standing before her, while still rough-looking, contained sophisticated engineering that actually worked. The nervous excitement that had been building inside her for weeks crescendoed as she tested the knee joint's response to different walking scenarios, when the joint automatically adjusted to simulate climbing stairs, exactly as it was designed to do. Tears welled in her eyes. "Dad, I wish you could see this," she whispered. For the first time since beginning the project, Lucy allowed herself to imagine Jack's face when he stood on his own 2 feet again. The prototype wasn't pretty, a patchwork of salvaged parts held together with bolts and industrial adhesive, but it functioned with remarkable precision. The motors responded to minute pressure changes, the joints moved naturally, and the weight distribution followed the principles Mrs. Wilson had taught her. Lucy carefully packed the prototype into a duffel bag. Tomorrow would be the moment of truth, the first real test with Jack. Either her creation would help him walk again, or it would join the pile of failed attempts. Either way, something told her that tomorrow would change everything. Dawn had barely broken when Lucy woke, her mind already racing through final adjustments for the prototype. She'd arranged to meet Jack in an abandoned lot behind the school, private enough for the test, with flat ground and a chain-link fence he could hold for stability. After adding extra padding to the connection points and triple-checking the power systems, Lucy carefully packed the prosthetics into her father's old duffel bag. The legs were heavier than she'd hoped, but still manageable, approximately 12 pounds each. "Going to school early?" Olivia asked, surprised to see her daughter ready before 7 a.m. "Science project deadline," Lucy replied, not exactly lying. "Mrs. Wilson is meeting me to help." Indeed, the retired nurse had agreed to assist, bringing her medical expertise and a first aid kit, just in case. Lucy had finally confided the true purpose of her project, and Mrs. Wilson, after initial concern, had become her most dedicated supporter. As Lucy arrived at the testing site, her stomach twisted with nerves. What if the legs failed? What if they hurt Jack somehow? What if all her work resulted in just another disappointment? Mrs. Wilson arrived moments later, her kind face calming Lucy's fears somewhat. "Remember, dear, even professional prosthetists require multiple fittings." Jack arrived last, maneuvering his wheelchair through the broken gate. He looked puzzled when he saw the duffel bag and Mrs. Wilson. "I have something to show you," Lucy said, her voice smaller than intended. "Actually, something I made for you." Jack's eyebrows rose. "For me?" With trembling hands, Lucy unzipped the duffel and carefully removed the prosthetic legs. Sunlight glinted off the aluminum supports and repurposed motors as she laid them on the blanket she'd spread out. Jack's expression transformed from confusion to astonishment. "Lucy, are these?" "I've been working on them since we met," she explained, hurriedly. "They're made from recycled parts, the motors from a discarded wheelchair, knee joints adapted from precision printing equipment. Mrs. Wilson helped with the anatomical design." Jack stared at the prosthetics, then at Lucy, speechless. "I know they don't look professional," she continued nervously, "but I've tested the weight capacity and joint responsiveness and they should work. If you want to try them." Jack's weathered face crumpled slightly, his clear blue eyes dampening. "Child, do you have any idea what you've done?" "We don't know if they work yet," Lucy cautioned. "That's not what I mean." Jack shook his head in wonder. "Most people walk past me every day without a second glance. You built me legs." Mrs. Wilson stepped forward professionally. "If you'd like to try them, I can assist with the fitting." I worked with amputee patients for many years. The next 30 minutes were intense focus as they worked together. Mrs. Wilson helped position the prosthetics against Jack's residual limbs, making small adjustments to the padding. Lucy explained the control system. Pressure at specific points would activate different movement patterns. Ready? Lucy asked finally, her heart pounding. Jack nodded, gripping the fence with white knuckles as he positioned himself upright. Mrs. Wilson stood nearby, ready to catch him if necessary. With a deep breath, Jack shifted his weight onto the prosthetics. The servos hummed softly, adjusting to the pressure. For a terrifying moment, the right knee wobbled dangerously, then stabilized. And Jack was, standing. "It works," he whispered, disbelief painting his features. "It actually works." Tentatively, he moved his right leg forward. The prosthetic responded smoothly, bending at the knee and ankle in a natural walking motion. The left followed. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. Lucy covered her mouth, tears streaming freely down her face as Jack took his first unassisted steps in what must have been years. Mrs. Wilson dabbed at her own eyes with a handkerchief. After 10 cautious steps, Jack turned somewhat awkwardly but successfully and walked back to them. His smile was radiant despite tears tracking through his beard. Without warning, he embraced Lucy, his body shaking with emotion. "You've given me back something I thought was gone forever," he said hoarsely. "I don't know how to thank you." "They'll need adjustments," Lucy managed through her tears. "And probably—" "Lucy," Jack interrupted gently, holding her at arm's length, "you've changed my life." None of them could possibly know how prophetic those words would prove to be, or how in 3 days' time, Lucy would discover that her simple act of compassion had set in motion events that would transform her own life forever. Lucy was helping. Her mother prepared dinner when the distinctive rumble of a powerful engine drew their attention to the window. A sleek, cherry-red Mustang convertible had parked directly in front of their apartment building, a luxury vehicle starkly out of place in their working-class neighborhood. "Probably someone lost," Olivia remarked, returning to chopping vegetables. Lucy's curiosity kept her at the window. She watched as the driver's door opened and a tall figure emerged. Her breath caught as the man stood upright, walking with a distinctive but confident gait that she recognized immediately. "It's Jack," she whispered incredulously. But this wasn't the Jack she knew. Gone was the unkempt beard and weathered clothing. This man wore a perfectly tailored gray suit, his face clean-shaven, hair neatly trimmed. Only his clear blue eyes remained familiar, and the mechanical legs beneath his trousers, moving with the slight hydraulic whisper she'd engineered. "Mom," Lucy called, her voice unsteady. "Someone's coming to see us." The doorbell rang moments later. When Olivia opened, the transformed Jack stood in their hallway, holding a sleek leather briefcase. "Good evening, Mrs. Thompson," he said with unexpected polish. "My name is Nathan Reed. I believe you know me through your daughter." Olivia looked bewildered. "I'm sorry, Mr. Reed. I don't think we've met." "Mom," Lucy stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the visitor. "It's Jack from the street corner." Nathan smiled apologetically. "May I come in? I owe you both an explanation." Stunned, Olivia gestured toward their small living room. Nathan moved with measured steps. Lucy immediately noticed he'd made adjustments to the prosthetics, improving their stability. "First," he said once they were seated, "I want to apologize for the deception. My name is indeed Nathan Reed, not Jack." He turned to Lucy. "Though everything I shared with you about losing my legs was true?" "I don't understand," Olivia said, her expression hardening protectively. "You've been lying to my daughter?" Nathan nodded solemnly. "In a manner of speaking, yes, I'm the CEO and founder of Reed Technologies." Lucy gasped. Even she recognized the name. Reed Technologies was a multi-billion-dollar company that manufactured advanced medical devices and military-grade communication systems. 3 years ago, I lost my legs in a helicopter accident while testing a new emergency response system, Nathan continued. The company's medical division developed cutting-edge prosthetics for me, $2 million custom legs that allowed me to continue running my company without anyone knowing of my disability. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. But something changed in me after the accident. I became disconnected from the real world. My advisor suggested I take time away from the corporate bubble. So you pretended to be homeless? Olivia asked incredulously. I began spending time in different disguises in different cities, Nathan explained. Not just as a homeless veteran, but as various ordinary people. It started as a way to understand the markets we serve, but became something more profound. A test of human compassion. Who would notice me? Who would help? He turned to Lucy, his eyes filled with emotion. In 6 months of these experiments, do you know how many children stopped to actually speak with me? 1. Your daughter. Lucy sat frozen, trying to process this revelation. The man she'd built legs for was a billionaire who already had premium prosthetics? As if reading her thoughts, Nathan continued. The professional prosthetics I own are technological marvels, but they're inaccessible to most people. They cost more than houses. But these... He tapped his leg, producing a hollow sound through his trousers. These legs you built from discarded parts work nearly as well. In some ways, better. The sudden slam of the apartment door made them all jump. Olivia had returned from taking out the trash, her face tight with suspicion. If this is some kind of joke, she began. It's not, Nathan assured her quickly. Mrs. Thompson, your daughter has done something extraordinary. She's created functional, responsive prosthetics at a fraction of the cost of commercial models. With all due respect, Mr. Reed, Olivia's voice was steel. Why are you here? What do you want with my daughter? The question hung in the air, charged with a mother's protective instinct. Lucy held her breath, suddenly uncertain whether this revelation was the beginning of something wonderful or something to fear. Nathan Reed placed his briefcase on the coffee table, his movements deliberate and careful. The prosthetic legs Lucy had built for him responded with barely audible mechanical whispers, a sound she recognized intimately after weeks of design work. Mrs. Thompson, Nathan began, his tone respectful. Your daughter has created something that could help thousands of people who can't afford conventional prosthetics. I'd like to make a proposal that would benefit Lucy, expand access to her innovation, and protect her intellectual property. Olivia moved closer to Lucy, her protective instinct palpable. She's 12 years old, Mr. Reed, which makes her accomplishment even more remarkable, he replied. The engineering principles she's applied intuitively would impress seasoned prosthetic designers. What she lacks in formal training, she makes up for with ingenuity. Lucy found her voice. You already have million-dollar legs. Why were you using mine? Nathan smiled. Scientific curiosity at first. I wanted to see how they compared. He rolled up his pant leg, revealing Lucy's creation, now polished and refined, but unmistakably her design. My team made some cosmetic improvements, but the core functionality is still yours. And here's what surprised us. They're more comfortable. Comfortable? Lucy echoed. My expensive prosthetics prioritize perfect biomechanical simulation and strength, which makes them heavy and rigid. Yours prioritize adaptability and user comfort. Nathan's expression grew thoughtful. When I showed them to my chief engineer, he couldn't believe they were built by a child from salvaged parts. He called them intuitive engineering, solving problems by understanding the human need rather than following conventional approaches. Olivia remained skeptical. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Reed? Nathan opened his briefcase and removed several documents. First, a full scholarship to the Einstein Academy of Advanced Sciences, the premier school for young innovators. They accept only 20 students per year worldwide. Lucy's eyes widened. Everyone in STEM fields knew about Einstein Academy. It was where future pioneers learned directly from current innovators. Second, Nathan continued, Reed Technologies would like to fund the patenting of Lucy's prosthetic design and develop a production model that maintains her low-cost approach. Lucy would retain ownership of the intellectual property, with Reed providing manufacturing and distribution. He slid the documents toward them. Finally, I'd like to establish a research, grant in Lucy's name for affordable medical technology, which she could direct once she completes her education. Olivia scanned the paperwork, her brow furrowed. This is overwhelming. Why would you offer all this? Because I've spent billions developing medical technology that only the wealthy can afford, Nathan answered candidly. Lucy reminded me of what I'd forgotten, that innovation should serve humanity, not just those who can pay premium prices. He gestured toward his legs. My company's prosthetics cost $2 million. Lucy built these for approximately $450 using recycled components. They're not as durable or refined, but they work. Do you understand the implications? Millions of amputees worldwide go without prosthetics because of cost barriers. Lucy's approach could change that paradigm. Lucy's mind raced with possibilities. We could make them even better with proper materials, she mused almost to herself. The joint response could be smoother if we optimized the hydraulic system. Nathan smiled at her immediate focus on improvements rather than the opportunity itself. That's exactly why I believe in your potential, Lucy. Olivia set the documents down. This seems too good to be true, Mr. Reed. What's the catch? Do you get control of her invention? A fair question, he acknowledged. The agreement explicitly states that Lucy retains ownership. Reed Technologies would have manufacturing rights but cannot alter the fundamental low-cost approach without her approval. We would ensure the technology remains accessible to those who need it most. He leaned forward earnestly. Mrs. Thompson, I understand your skepticism. You're protecting your daughter from someone who appeared in your life under false pretenses. But I'm not here to exploit Lucy's talent. I'm here because I recognize it as something precious that should be nurtured. Olivia studied him intently. And if we decline? Then I thank you for your time and wish Lucy continued success, Nathan replied without hesitation. Though I would urge you to consult with a patent attorney regardless. Lucy's design should be protected, with or without Reed Technologies' involvement. An uncomfortable silence filled the small apartment as Olivia weighed the proposal. Lucy's gaze alternated between her mother's concerned face and Nathan's patient one. Mom, Lucy finally said, her voice quiet but determined. I want to do this. Not for the scholarship or the money, but because I could help people like Jack, like Mr. Reed, who don't have access to expensive prosthetics. Olivia took Lucy's hand. Honey, this would change everything. You'd be leaving your school, your home. I know. Lucy nodded. But remember what Dad always said? Sometimes the scariest paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes at the mention of her late husband. He also said to read the fine print, she added with a watery smile. Turning to Nathan, Olivia straightened her shoulders. We'll need time to review these documents properly, and I'd like our own lawyer to look them over. Of course, Nathan agreed immediately. Take all the time you need, and please, use my attorney, at my expense but acting solely in your interests. They can explain the terms without bias toward Reed Technologies. He removed a business card from his wallet. This is my personal number. Call me with any questions day or night. As he stood to leave, Nathan extended his hand to Lucy. Regardless of your decision, I want to thank you, Lucy Thompson. Not just for these legs, but for reminding me why I became an engineer in the first place, to solve problems that matter. Lucy shook his hand, still processing the extraordinary turn her life had taken. Just weeks ago, she'd been a lonely girl tinkering with discarded electronics in her bedroom. Now, her invention might help people around the world. As Nathan walked toward the door, each step a testament to Lucy's creativity, he paused. One more thing. Those peanut butter sandwiches you brought me. Best I've ever had. After he left, Lucy and Olivia sat silently amid the documents that offered a new future. Outside their window, the red Mustang pulled away, its engine purring into the distance. What do you think, Mom? Lucy finally asked. Olivia wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders. I think your father would be incredibly proud of you, and a little terrified, just like I am. Together, they began reading the documents that would transform their lives, carefully examining each clause and condition, just as Lucy's father had taught them. The Einstein Academy of Advanced Sciences towered before them, a gleaming monument of glass and steel that seemed to reach toward the clouds. Lucy clutched her backpack straps tightly as she stood beside her mother, both of them momentarily frozen by the imposing entrance. "It looks like something from a science fiction movie," Olivia whispered. 3 weeks had passed in a whirlwind since Nathan Reed's proposal. After thorough review by independent lawyers, paid for by Nathan but loyal to the Thompsons, they had accepted the offer with minor modifications. Now, Lucy stood at the threshold of a world utterly different from the one she'd known in Detroit. "Thompson?" A woman with a tablet approached them. "I'm Dr. Winters, Director of Student Services. Welcome to Einstein Academy." Inside, the differences between this institution and Lucy's previous school became even more apparent. The hallways featured interactive displays of student projects. Laboratories filled with equipment Lucy had only seen in magazines gleamed behind glass walls. Young people from diverse backgrounds conversed animatedly about quantum computing and bioengineering as casually as other kids might discuss video games. "This will be your dormitory," Dr. Winters explained, showing them to a compact but modern room. "You'll share common spaces with other students, but everyone has private sleeping quarters." The reality of their separation suddenly hit both mother and daughter. "Mom will be able to visit, right?" Lucy asked, her voice smaller than usual. "Of course," Dr. Winters assured them. "We have family weekends monthly, plus video calls are encouraged daily." After the tour concluded, they were escorted to Nathan Reed's office on campus, a surprise Lucy hadn't expected. "I serve on the board," he explained when they arrived. "And I've established a temporary office here to oversee the development of your prosthetic project." The next hours were filled with paperwork, orientation materials, and discussion of Lucy's schedule. While Olivia handled administrative details with Dr. Winters, Nathan showed Lucy the dedicated laboratory space assigned to her prosthetic project. "This is all for me?" she asked, stunned by the equipment. "For your vision," Nathan corrected. "You'll be working with a small team of engineers and materials scientists who will help refine your design while maintaining its accessibility." Late afternoon, the moment of separation could no longer be delayed. Standing in the dormitory entrance, Olivia hugged Lucy fiercely. "Call me tonight," she insisted, struggling to remain composed. "And remember who you are, Lucy Thompson. You're not just your invention or your scholarship." "I know, Mom," Lucy replied, her own eyes damp. "I'm your daughter, and Dad's." As Olivia's taxi pulled away, Lucy felt a hollow sensation in her chest. A mixture of loss and anticipation that left her momentarily breathless. Her first week passed in a disorienting blur. The academic demands were rigorous, stretching even Lucy's considerable intellect. Her classmates, while welcoming, came from privileged backgrounds that highlighted the differences in their experiences. Many had famous scientist parents or came from generational wealth, with resumes already featuring published research or patented inventions. During evening video calls, Lucy maintained a bright facade for her mother's benefit, describing the amazing facilities and interesting classes. She omitted mentions of her struggle to fit in, or the overwhelming pressure she felt to justify her place among these exceptional peers. In the prosthetics lab, however, Lucy found her confidence. Here, her practical experience and intuitive approach shined. She worked alongside professional engineers who respected her insights despite her age, improving her original design with advanced materials while maintaining its affordable core principles. Nathan visited the lab regularly, often wearing Lucy's prosthetics rather than his premium models, providing real-time feedback that proved invaluable to the development process. "How are you adjusting?" he asked one afternoon, noticing the shadows under her eyes. "It's different," Lucy admitted. "Everyone here seems so prepared, like they've been training for this their whole lives." Nathan nodded thoughtfully. "They have in a way, but none of them built functional prosthetic legs from recycled parts in their bedroom. You earned your place here, Lucy, through raw talent rather than grooming and privilege. As the weeks passed, Lucy gradually found her rhythm. The initial culture shock gave way to determined focus. She might not share her classmates' backgrounds, but she possessed something equally valuable: practical ingenuity and a first-hand understanding of the problems her work could solve. This wasn't just a new school, it was a new world. And despite the challenges, Lucy was determined to navigate it on her own terms. Lucy was adjusting to her new routine at Einstein Academy when the first signs of trouble appeared. She noticed the prosthetics team exchanging concerned glances during their weekly progress meeting. Nathan, normally present for these sessions, had been absent for 2 weeks, traveling overseas to meet with potential manufacturing partners. "Is everything okay?" Lucy asked after the third such exchange. Dr. Voss, the lead engineer, hesitated. "We've received some inquiries from Meditech Industries' legal department, nothing to worry about." But by the following day, the inquiries had escalated dramatically. Lucy arrived at the lab to find 3 stern-faced individuals in expensive suits waiting with Dr. Winters. "Lucy, these representatives from Meditech Industries have some questions about your prosthetic design," Dr. Winters explained. Her usual warmth replaced by careful professionalism. The oldest of the 3 stepped forward. "I'm Lawrence Keller, Chief Legal Officer for Meditech. We have concerns that your prototype may infringe on several of our company's patents." "Infringe?" Lucy repeated, the unfamiliar legal term settling uneasily in her stomach. "I built them from scratch, using principles and mechanisms covered by our intellectual property protections," Keller replied smoothly. "Particularly regarding the pressure-sensitive response system and the hydraulic joint mechanisms," Dr. Winters intervened. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion with Ms. Thompson's legal guardian present." Within hours, Olivia had flown in from Detroit, her face tight with worry as the situation was explained. Together with Dr. Winters, they met the Meditech representatives in a conference room. "We've reviewed your daughter's design thoroughly," Keller began, sliding a document across the table. "This cease and desist order requires immediate termination of all development activities related to the prosthetic project." "This is ridiculous," Olivia protested. "Lucy developed her design independently using recycled parts." "Using techniques covered by 17 separate Meditech patents," countered a younger lawyer, tapping a thick binder. "The origin of the physical components is irrelevant to intellectual property law." Lucy felt sick. She understood enough to realize what was happening. A powerful corporation was claiming ownership of ideas she'd developed on her own. "We've called Mr. Reed," Dr. Winters assured them. "He's attempting to return from Singapore immediately, but there are limited flights." "How convenient that he's unavailable," Keller remarked with a thin smile. "In the meantime, we'll need full access to all prototype materials for inspection." "Absolutely not," Olivia stated firmly. "We're not agreeing to anything without our own legal representation." Over the next 2 days, the situation deteriorated. Meditech escalated their threats, adding potential financial damages to their claims. The Academy's lawyers reviewed the case and delivered sobering news. Fighting Meditech would be expensive and protracted, with uncertain outcomes. Lucy's project lab was temporarily sealed pending legal resolution. Her classmates, initially supportive, began to distance themselves as rumors spread about potential lawsuits affecting the Academy. Alone in her dormitory room, Lucy finally broke down. "It's not fair," she sobbed to her mother during a video call. "They're not trying to help people, they just want to keep their expensive products from having competition." "I know, honey," Olivia replied, her own voice strained. "Our lawyer is trying to reach Nathan again, but his office says he's still in transit." Lucy wiped her eyes, anger replacing despair. "This is exactly why I wanted to make affordable prosthetics in the first place. Companies like Meditech don't care about people who can't pay their ridiculous prices." Later that evening, Lucy's tablet pinged with an article notification. Meditech Industries moves to block teenage inventors' low-cost prosthetic design. The story had leaked to the media, complete with quotes from Meditech representatives about protecting innovative intellectual property and maintaining safety standards. Desperation gnawed at her as she paced her small room. Everything was unraveling: her project, her scholarship, even her new beginning. Without the prosthetics project, would Nathan still support her education? Would the academy still want her? The unfairness burned in her chest. She hadn't stolen anything. She'd solved problems with whatever materials she could find, the way her father had taught her. How could someone claim ownership of ideas that had come from her own mind? As Lucy stared out her window at the darkening campus, one thought crystallized amid the turmoil. She wouldn't give up without a fight. Somehow she would find a way to defend her creation, not for herself, but for everyone who needed affordable prosthetics. The question was, how could a 12-year-old girl stand against a multinational corporation? The first sign that something unusual was happening came when Lucy arrived at breakfast the following morning. Instead of the awkward silence she'd grown accustomed to, students at neighboring tables nodded in acknowledgement. Some even offered encouraging smiles. "Have you seen this?" asked Kim, a 15-year-old quantum computing prodigy who had rarely spoken to Lucy before. She slid her tablet across the table, displaying a trending hashtag. "Let Lucy build." Bewildered, Lucy scrolled through hundreds of posts from engineers, disability advocates, and ordinary people supporting her fight against Meditech. The original news article had struck a nerve, portraying her as a young innovator being crushed by corporate greed. "Dr. Parker called the news desk," Kim explained. "Your former science teacher? He gave them the full backstory, how you built the original prosthetics to help someone you thought was homeless." Before Lucy could respond, her tablet chimed with a video call request from an unexpected source, Mr. Parker himself. "Lucy." His familiar face appeared on screen. "Sorry for the media attention, but someone needed to tell your story properly." "You did this?" Lucy asked, stunned. Mr. Parker nodded. "Meditech tried to control the narrative. I couldn't let that stand." His expression turned serious. "Listen, I've reached out to the Detroit Science Educators Association. They're organizing a letter-writing campaign contesting Meditech's claims. You inspired a lot of people here, Lucy." Throughout the day, the momentum grew. Lucy received a message from Mrs. Wilson saying the Senior Citizens Technology Club, which Lucy hadn't known existed, was organizing a social media awareness campaign. "We may be old," Mrs. Wilson wrote, "but we know how to make noise." By afternoon, several Einstein Academy students had formed a free innovation defense committee, analyzing Meditech's patent claims and identifying potential weaknesses. 3 engineering professors joined them, offering expertise and asking pointed questions about whether the patents truly covered Lucy's specific implementation. "Meditech's claims focus on their custom materials," explained Professor Yamamoto during an impromptu strategy session. "But Lucy's design uses entirely different components. The function may be similar, but the mechanism is unique." Meanwhile, in ways Lucy couldn't have anticipated, her story had captured public imagination. A journalist tracked down and interviewed Jake Murphy, the wheelchair recycling center manager who had allowed Lucy to take the components that became the foundation of her breakthrough. His emotional account of the determined young girl further humanized the story. By evening, the Academy switchboard was overwhelmed with calls offering support. Scientific American requested an interview. 3 patent attorneys offered pro bono representation. Even competitors of Meditech began subtly signaling support, sensing an opportunity to position themselves as champions of innovation. Most significantly, a global community of makers, hobbyists, and engineers who created open-source designs had discovered Lucy's case. Within hours, they began crowdsourcing designs based on publicly available descriptions of her work, creating variations that explicitly avoided Meditech's patent claims. "They can't sue everyone," explained a senior student who moderated a popular engineering forum. "Open source development creates a legal hydra. Cut off one head, 2 more appear." Olivia watched these developments with mixed emotions. Pride in the support her daughter had inspired, but concern about the escalating situation. "This is bigger than we are now," she told Lucy during a private moment. "Are you sure you want to continue?" Lucy thought about Jack Nathan wearing her prosthetics, about the millions who couldn't afford Meditech's expensive options, and about her father's belief that innovation should help people. "I'm sure," she replied, her voice steadier than it had been in days. "But I wish Nathan were here." As if summoned by her words, Lucy's tablet chimed with a breaking news alert. Reed Technologies CEO returns from Asia, promises full support for young inventor. For the first time since Meditech's threats began, Lucy felt a genuine smile form. The battle wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. But she was no longer fighting alone. Sometimes the most powerful innovation wasn't a technology at all, but the community that formed around a shared vision. Nathan Reed's corporate jet touched down at 6:43 a.m., and by 9 he was striding into Einstein Academy's main conference room, where Lucy, Olivia, and a team of lawyers waited. Despite his transcontinental flight, he appeared immaculately dressed and fully alert. "I apologize for my absence during this critical time," he began, taking a seat beside Lucy. "But I believe it may have worked to our advantage." Lucy studied his face, noticing something unexpected, a hint of satisfaction beneath his concerned expression. "You don't seem worried," she observed. "Concerned, yes. Worried, no." Nathan turned to address the room. "Before we proceed, I'd like to speak with Lucy and Mrs. Thompson privately." Once alone, Nathan's demeanor shifted subtly. "Lucy, I owe you an explanation. The Meditech situation. It wasn't entirely unexpected." Olivia tensed. "What does that mean?" "It means," Nathan said carefully, "that I anticipated this response when we began developing Lucy's prosthetics commercially. Meditech has a history of aggressive patent enforcement to maintain their market dominance." Lucy's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "You knew they would come after me?" "I suspected they might," Nathan admitted. "What I didn't anticipate was being unavailable when it happened. My Singapore meetings were scheduled months ago, but the timing of Meditech's challenge was, unfortunately, coincidental." "So this was some kind of test?" Olivia asked, her voice sharp with indignation. "Not of Lucy," Nathan clarified quickly. "Of the concept itself. I needed to know if her innovation could withstand real-world challenges, including legal ones. Every breakthrough that threatens the status quo faces resistance." Lucy processed this information, emotions cycling between betrayal, confusion, and strange relief. "So what happens now?" Nathan's expression softened. "Now I reveal something I've been working toward for nearly 6 months." He removed a document from his briefcase and placed it before them. 3 days after our first meeting, after Lucy gave me those remarkable prosthetics, I began the process of acquiring Meditech Industries. Stunned silence filled the room. "The acquisition was finalized last week in Singapore," Nathan continued. "Meditech is now a subsidiary of Reed Technologies. Their legal team doesn't know yet. They've been operating under previous management's directives." Lucy struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what she was hearing. "You bought an entire company because of my project?" "Not entirely." Nathan smiled. "Meditech has valuable assets and talent. But yes, their patent portfolio was a primary motivation. I wanted to ensure those patents would never be used to block accessible medical innovations." Again, Olivia looked skeptical. "That must have cost a significant amount," Nathan acknowledged. "But sometimes the most important investments aren't the ones that show immediate returns. Your daughter reminded me of that." Lucy's initial relief was quickly replaced by indignation. "Why didn't you tell us this was your plan? Do you know how scared I've been, how this affected my mom?" Nathan's confidence faltered. "I didn't want to create false expectations if the acquisition failed, and frankly, I needed to see how the project would fare under pressure." He leaned forward earnestly. "Lucy, innovation isn't just about creating something new. It's about navigating the obstacles that inevitably arise. The way this community mobilized around your work proves its significance beyond any technical merit." Olivia placed a protective hand on Lucy's shoulder. "That doesn't justify putting a child through this stress." "You're right," Nathan conceded. I underestimated the personal toll, and for that, I apologize sincerely. Lucy remained quiet, processing everything. Finally, she asked, "What happens to my design now?" "That," Nathan said, "is entirely your decision. As promised from the beginning, you retain ownership of the intellectual property. Now, with Meditech's patents under friendly control, you face no legal barriers to development." He opened his tablet, displaying a global map with glowing points. While this controversy unfolded, something remarkable happened. Engineers worldwide began adapting your concept for local needs, using bamboo in Southeast Asia, repurposed automotive parts in Brazil. They're calling it Lucy's Legacy, a movement toward accessible prosthetic design. The magnitude of what had transpired finally hit Lucy. What had begun as one girl's desire to help a homeless man had catalyzed a global reimagining of prosthetic accessibility. "I still think you should have told us," she said firmly. Nathan nodded. "Fair criticism. Partnership requires transparency, another lesson I'm still learning." As they prepared to rejoin the others with this startling news, Lucy realized that while Nathan had tested her innovation's resilience, she had unintentionally tested something equally valuable: the power of a simple idea to unite people across boundaries of age, background, and geography. Perhaps that was the most significant innovation of all. 1 year after the Meditech controversy, Lucy stood on the dusty courtyard of a rural medical clinic in southern India, shielding her eyes against the bright morning sun. Around her, a group of children played an enthusiastic game of soccer, their laughter filling the air. What made this ordinary scene extraordinary was that 6 of the children wore prosthetic legs based on Lucy's design. They call them Thompson legs here, explained Dr. Prisha Mehta, the clinic's director. Though the local engineers have modified your original design quite ingeniously. Lucy watched as a boy about 10 years old executed a perfect kick, his prosthetic responding with the fluid motion she had strived to achieve in her earliest prototypes. The local version used bamboo for structural support instead of aluminum, and incorporated salvaged motorcycle parts for joint mechanisms, adaptations that made the prosthetics even more affordable and repairable using locally available materials. "How many have you fitted so far?" Olivia asked, standing beside her daughter. The past year had been transformative for her as well. She'd left her multiple jobs to become the operations director of the newly established Lucy Thompson Foundation. 43. "In this district alone," Dr. Mehta replied with pride. "And we've trained technicians from 3 neighboring regions. The open source model means knowledge spreads quickly," Nathan Reed observed from a short distance away, intentionally letting Lucy take center stage. Though he provided resources and organizational structure through Reed Technologies, he had been careful to ensure Lucy remained the face and heart of the project. Today he wore the newest iteration of Lucy's prosthetics, version 5.3, which he continued to use despite having access to more advanced options. The Foundation's approach had been revolutionary in its simplicity. Rather than manufacturing centralized products for global distribution, they created detailed, adaptable designs and taught local engineers to build them using whatever materials were readily available. This strategy bypassed import regulations, reduced costs, and created sustainable knowledge in communities that needed it most. As Lucy walked through the clinic, she marveled at how far her idea had traveled from her bedroom workshop in Detroit. 12 countries now had active programs implementing variations of her design. The Foundation had established 3 regional training centers, in India, Kenya, and Colombia, where engineers learned the core principles before adapting them to local conditions. "Lucy, Lucy," a small voice interrupted her thoughts. A 7-year-old girl with bright eyes and an even brighter smile approached her, walking confidently on prosthetic legs decorated with colorful painted patterns. Dr. Mehta translated as the child spoke rapidly in her native Tamil. "She says you gave her wings on her feet. Before she could not attend school because the journey was too difficult. Now she walks 3 kilometers each day." Lucy knelt to meet the girl's eyes, words failing her as the full impact of her work became tangible in this single interaction. The girl surprised her with a tight hug, whispering something else. "She says, Dr. Mehta translated with a smile. That she wants to be an engineer like you when she grows up. Later that evening, as the foundation team gathered on the clinic's rooftop to discuss the next day's training session, Olivia found Lucy sitting apart gazing at the stars. "Everything okay?" she asked, joining her daughter. "Better than okay," Lucy replied softly. "I was just thinking about Dad. How he always said that solving one problem well is better than half solving 100. Olivia wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "He would be beyond proud of you. The thing is," Lucy continued, "I started this just wanting to help one person. I never imagined." Her voice trailed off as she gestured toward the village, where lives were being transformed by technology that had begun in her Detroit bedroom. "That's how the biggest changes often start," Nathan commented, joining them with 2 cups of chai, tea. "Not with grand ambitions, but with the simple desire to solve a problem directly in front of you." As they discussed future plans, expanding to Vietnam next month, improving the training curriculum, developing a specialized pediatric version, Lucy realized that the true innovation hadn't been technological at all. It had been a shift in perspective, seeing possibility where others saw limitations, finding abundance in what had been discarded, and recognizing that the most sophisticated solution isn't always the most effective one. To Lucy Thompson, Nathan Sue raised his cup in a toast, who taught a billionaire how to walk again, in more ways than one. Lucy smiled, accepting the acknowledgement but knowing that her journey was far from complete. This was merely the beginning of a legacy that would continue to grow, one step at a time. The Lucy Thompson Center for Accessible Innovation stood as an architectural metaphor for its mission: beautiful yet practical, impressive without being intimidating. Sunlight streamed through the wide windows, illuminating the main hall where a crowd had gathered for the dedication ceremony. At 14, Lucy still felt strange seeing her name on the building. 2 years had passed since that fateful encounter with a man without legs on a Detroit street corner. In that time, her life had transformed completely, yet certain essential things remained unchanged. Her practical approach to problem solving, her dedication to accessibility, and the values her parents had instilled. "Ready?" Olivia asked, straightening the collar of Lucy's blazer. No longer working multiple jobs to make ends meet, Olivia now directed the Foundation's educational initiatives, helping identify young innovators from underprivileged backgrounds. Lucy nodded, taking a deep breath as they walked onto the stage where Nathan Reed waited at the podium. He stood tall and confident, using the original prosthetics Lucy had built, now maintained as his heritage pair, though significantly refined from their initial design. 2 years ago, Nathan began, his voice carrying across the hushed audience, a 12-year-old girl looked beyond my disguise and saw not just a man in need, but a problem she could solve. That moment of compassion sparked something remarkable. He gestured to the multimedia display behind him, showing time-lapse footage of the Thompson prosthetics evolution, from Lucy's bedroom prototype to the current global initiative that had helped over 8,000 people across 17 countries. Today, we dedicate this center not just as a research facility, but as a commitment to a philosophy. That innovation should serve humanity, not just those who can afford premium solutions. As Nathan continued, Lucy surveyed the audience. The front rows held familiar faces. Mr. Parker, who had left his teaching position to lead the center's educational outreach, Mrs. Wilson, now coordinating a network of retired medical professionals, who volunteered their expertise, classmates from Einstein Academy, who had become passionate advocates for accessible technology. Most moving were the rows of people wearing various iterations of Thompson prosthetics. They had traveled from across the country and in some cases around the world to attend the ceremony. Each represented a life changed, a potential unlocked. When it was Lucy's turn to speak, she approached the podium with the quiet confidence she had developed over 2 years of presenting to engineers, investors, and government officials. "My father once told me that every discarded object still had potential. It just needed someone to recognize it," she began. I've learned that the same is true of ideas, of opportunities, and most importantly, of people. She outlined the center's ambitious new initiatives, expanding beyond prosthetics into other accessible medical technologies, developing educational programs to nurture young innovators from diverse backgrounds, and creating a global network of community workshops where local needs could drive adaptation and innovation. The prosthetics program was just the beginning, Lucy explained. Today we're announcing the Open Access Medical Initiative, which will apply the same principles to other crucial technologies, from diabetes management tools to mobility devices, all designed with accessibility as the primary goal. As she concluded her remarks, Lucy reflected on how her personal journey had come full circle. What began as a solitary project in her bedroom had grown beyond anything she could have imagined, yet the core principle remained unchanged: seeing possibility where others saw limitations. After the ceremony during the reception, Nathan found Lucy standing apart from the crowd, watching children demonstrating athletic abilities with their prosthetics in the center's courtyard. "Something on your mind?" he asked. "I was just thinking about legacies," Lucy replied. "Not mine, that feels strange to even say, but my dad's. How his way of seeing the world lives on in this work." Nathan nodded thoughtfully. The greatest innovations often aren't things at all, but perspectives that change how we see problems. As they watched the children play, Lucy understood that her father's true gift hadn't been teaching her engineering principles, but something far more valuable: the ability to see potential where others saw only limitations. That vision had started with discarded electronics in a Detroit apartment, but had grown into a movement that was changing lives across the world. The real legacy wasn't in the building that bore her name, or even in the technologies it would develop. It was in the chain of compassion and possibility that would continue long after today's ceremony ended. One person seeing a need, recognizing a solution, and having the courage to build it themselves. That was the Thompson way. And now, it belonged to the world.